What is up, guys? Welcome to the channel. My name's Micah, and today we're getting a performance tune, an ECU FLASH on our Honda CRF450RL. So in this video, we're gonna be removing the factory ECU. We're gonna send that off to a shop that they can load on a performance tune to our computer. And once we get it back from them here, we'll put it back in our bike. We'll take this baby out for a rip and we'll see what's changed. So there's gonna be a couple reasons that we're getting this ECU FLASH done to our motorcycle. The first reason is that these bikes from the factory, they have a very pronounced on-off throttle feeling, so they have what's called a fuel decel cut. So what that is as you're letting off the throttle, the computer is just cutting all the fueling to your motorcycle. We see this on a lot of newer motorcycles these days. It's kind of just for emissions reasons, but that fuel decel cut, it makes for a very violent, a very jerky on-off throttle experience when you're riding. So this ECU FLASH is going to eliminate that fuel decel cut, and then also we just put a full exhaust on our motorcycle. So with the addition of that, we're going to need to adjust our fueling levels so that we're not running too lean, and it will let us get the most out of this exhaust. We're not gaining any horsepower just by putting the exhaust on the bike, but once we get the FLASH done, the FLASH in combination with the full exhaust should add 7 horsepower to our bike. So this thing is going to be rowdy. It is absolutely going to rip. I mean, we dropped weight from the full exhaust, we're eliminating the fuel decel cut, and we're increasing the horsepower by 20%. And that all sounds good to me. So let's start by removing the factory ECU on our bike. So the first thing that we're going to do is remove our seat with just these 2 bolts on either side. So now with those out, we should just be able to lift this right up. All right, so if we look at the motorcycle, moving up towards the gas tank with the seat off, just behind that, this is gonna be our ECU. So it looks like it has these little rubber sleeves around it that go on this metal bracket here. I think we've gotta remove that. So just 2 bolts here, 8mm. All right, and then those bolts, it's gonna be your bolt. There's gonna be a little silver spacer, and then there's a washer behind there as well, so don't lose those. All right, and then when you have that computer kind of loose that you can pull it up a little bit, then that's the point that you can pull this rubber sleeve off of those metal tabs. I'll get a little straight screwdriver to help me here, make life easy. There is one side. All right, so there's that bracket completely off. So the only thing left on the ECU is just going to be the harness here. So there's just a little tab it looks like we can push down. Voila! All right, phase 1 is complete. So now we're gonna box this up and we will ship it to our tuner to put that FLASH on it. All right, guys, so we just finally got our ECU back and installed on the bike. So from the day that I sent it out, it took 8 days before I got it back from the tuner. And then we had a week of bitter cold days, a couple snowstorms in there. So it's been over 2 weeks since we've ridden this bike, and I just took it around the block. I haven't even gone a mile yet, just to make sure that everything ran good. I hadn't run this bike at all, ridden it, since we did the full exhaust system and then our ECU tune. I wasn't gonna ride it after installing that full exhaust without having a tune because our bike would just be running too lean. So right away we took out the ECU to send it off to get tuned. And in just my quick ride around the block here, just to make sure everything was running good, this thing is insane. So much has changed on it. It's absolutely an unrecognizable bike from what it was before. So we're gonna gear up, we're gonna take it for a ride and hit the streets. I'm gonna take you guys with, and we'll just talk about what all is changed about the bike now that it's had the tune and the full exhaust. And I hope you're ready for this, because it's gonna be awesome. All right. Gosh, I cannot wait to take you guys on this ride. Wow. This thing is totally awesome now. And our full exhaust, the thunder. Now you literally start to notice the changes right off the get-go. Just right when you start out, just your throttle response. If you add a quarter throttle, it adds a quarter of your gas. If you add half throttle, it adds half gas. You know, before, this bike was so 0 or 100. It was just lurchy. It was all in or nothing. And just starting out here in first gear, letting the clutch out, oh my gosh. You just instantly know that the throttle response is so much more refined. Everything about this is just more tame. Now, as far as performance specs on this bike, before the tune, before the exhaust, put down 37 to 38 horsepower to the ground. And now, after the full exhaust and the full ECU tune, we should be putting, according to the dyno charts that I've seen, we should be putting down 45 horsepower to the ground. And here we go. Gosh. You know, when you're trying to ride nice, it's just so easy to be buttery smooth on that throttle now. And when I let off the gas, it's no longer some violent engine braking. Gosh, I mean, before this bike, when you let off the gas, you had to brace yourself because the engine braking was just so strong. But if you punch it, she wants to go. Now, we'll just be doing this test on the paved roads because that's where I have full traction. So it'll be easiest to show you guys, well, and show myself, all the performance gains and what has changed on this bike. The thing that I like most about this ECU Flash that we got has to be the D-cell fuel cut that they got rid of. So that D-cell fuel cut, it's really just on bikes for emissions reasons these days, but when you let off the gas, it completely cuts throttle. Whereas now, if I'm going along and I let off the gas a little bit, you can tell that our bike doesn't completely cut all the fuel. That engine braking is perfect, it's smooth, it's relevant now to your throttle position. Whereas before, man, you just barely let off the gas and it was like you smashed on the brakes. And then when you went to add throttle again, it was just like the jerkiest thing ever. So now with this tune, going from about 37, 38 horsepower up to 45, every ounce of that is noticeable. The bike definitely feels faster. It just rings out better. The pull throughout the rev range is better. But at the same time, with that throttle response being more dialed in and more precise, it's also easier to ride. So that's kind of a funny concept. How can it be faster? How can it have more power and be easier, gentler when you want it to be? And it just absolutely is in every way. You know, before the tune, and the thing is, you could get the tune on this bike. It's not like you have to have the full exhaust, modifications to your airbox. You can absolutely get a bone stock CRF450RL tuned. It's a little windy here. I better close my visor so you can hear me better. But you can absolutely get a bone stock 450RL tuned and get all the perks that we got here with ours. You're just gonna get a little bit less overall horsepower. So I think with everything else being stock and doing an ECU Flash, you know, they say you go up to about 41 horsepower. But just getting rid of all the restrictions, that D-cell fuel cut, you know, how precise and how predictive the throttle is then afterwards, it's just a game changer. Kid is just running out in the road. Careful, buddy. Before the ECU tune,
it's just so smooth. The throttle response is so predictable. It's so nice. But before the ECU tune, you know, bone stock, this bike right out of the crate, it's kind of difficult to ride. Actually, it's very difficult to ride well. You know, you have a good performance machine, good power, low weight, good suspension, but just with the way the power hits and everything about the stock performance, this bike is twitchy, it's jerky. It just would not be easy to be a newer rider or a less experienced rider and be able to ride this well. You know, bone stock, I would not give this bike to somebody who wasn't extremely experienced for an on or off-road setting. It was just that bad or that different. You know, I never thought it was bad, but instantly, the first time I rode one of these, the first time I rode our bike here, I was like, wow, that is interesting. And of course, the wheelies, we still got it. That front end came up pretty easy. I mean, it always did come up pretty easy on this thing. It's so light, it's so powerful, and you sit so high up that wheelies are just like nothing. So at the end of the day, the CRF450RL, in my opinion, absolutely needs a performance tune, so like a flash or a different performance ECU. Whatever way you want to go there, I mean, seems like some of the aftermarket performance ECUs, you know, Vortex and stuff, you'll spend $700–800 for some of those. But, you know, if you go the route of just getting an ECU flash, you know, that can just cost you like $200. So much cheaper just to get your factory ECU flashed. But after riding the bike before and after, it is just so improved and it's so much more enjoyable. It's such a better riding experience after our flash. Just everything that it smoothed out about the power band, about the throttle response, with the engine braking, with going from off throttle to on throttle or vice versa. You need some sort of a tune on a 450RL. So if you're thinking about buying one of these, consider that definitely in your game plan. You need to do that. So in our 450RL here was bone stock. Yes, it's lightweight, it's quick, it's good suspension, but the whole stock package all together, right off the bat, I didn't know if it was something I was going to keep around forever. You know, it's exactly what I thought it would be, but it wasn't as refined as I was hoping it would be. If that makes sense. Little wheelie there for the pedestrians. We gotta keep the public happy. Or on their toes, rather. Man, this thing is quick now. She rings out good. And I guess the word quick, I mean, yes, there's sport bikes out there with over 200 horsepower. And we're rocking 45 horsepower, so... But it's all relevant, you know, for a dirt bike, for a bike that weighs, you know, under 300 pounds, 45 horsepower, scoots it along real nice. And just the bike's overall feel now, I mean, just going down the road at about 55 miles per hour here, this now feels like something that I could do fairly often. You know, I don't mind a quick highway jaunt now. Whereas before, the throttle was just so touchy. I mean, just a bump in the road that barely jarred your wrist. I mean, it just jerked you. But now this is just such a more friendly bike for the rider. It's just so much more enjoyable to cruise. You know, in some of my reviews on this bike, I've said before that the stock 450RL is not good for in-town driving. You know, kind of that slow-moving traffic, like 15, 20, 25 miles per hour. This bike was literally horrible at. I mean, it was absolutely horrible. It was so hard to just hold your wrist, hold the throttle still to maintain one slower speed. And now I can just short shift and do slow moving stuff. And it's just awesome. So this really is the best of both worlds. If you want to go really fast and have the absolute most performance you can, get the Tune. If you want this bike to be more gentle and tame and have a more predictable throttle response, that driving in, you know, slow technical off-road terrains, you know, if you're in the tight woods, tight trails, or if you're in an urban setting, that slow-moving downtown stop-and-go traffic, all of that is literally 10 times more enjoyable now. And just before, it absolutely wasn't. That's probably kind of hard to understand and explain, but if you ride this bike bone stock and then you ride one with this ECU tune, whether it has an exhaust on it, modifications to anything else at all, well, and I said we'd stay on the pavement. And apparently on a gravel road, it will blow the rear tire off in every gear now. Well, that's kind of fun. The thing that's funny about this now is that I had said that this bike is not a dual sport for smelling the roses. I mean, this just wasn't something that was good to go slow on or drive easy on. And now, oh man, you can just be real soft, real easy on the throttle. It's not a jerky experience anymore. I mean, this is just very enjoyable. This is a very enjoyable motorcycle to ride. So seemingly the ECU tune has made all the great things about this bike 10 times better. And it's completely taken away every bad thing, every negative thing I had to say about the 450RL is gone. It is gone. I don't even think any of my other reviews are relevant on this bike now. Just some of my complaints and gripes about how aggressive this was and the power delivery, you know, that herky-jerky fuel decel, vanished. It's all gone. A hooligan motorcycle, I tell you what. Good grief. Now look at us cruising through residentials at 17 miles per hour. I can let off the throttle a little bit, slow down to 15, 14, get on the throttle. Everything is buttery smooth. You cannot do this on a factory 450RL. You absolutely cannot. Come to a stop, nice slow start. 10 miles per hour, 11, 12, 13. In first gear. Before the tune, this would have been like a... That's how it would have been on a stock 450RL. So this is just unbelievable that I can putt around gently like this on this bike and drive it like a granny. Now, not that anybody's gonna drive this motorcycle like a granny, but just let that be a message to you that you're tight trail riding for woods or obstacles. You don't have to have some death grip on the handlebars and throttle anymore. I mean, it's just very smooth and very easy now. Very predictable. Yeah, we're just idling through residentials. Yep, I take back every negative thing I had ever said about this bike. Like I said, all the negatives, every gripe I had is completely gone now. Wow. This is an amazing machine. And the thing that sucks is that a lot of people that just ride this bike when it's bone stock, you know, say they take a new one out for a test drive, they're never gonna think that this bike is that good. And I'm right with them. I did not think that a 450RL could ever have become, you know, kind of a gentle, easy trail cruising, smelling the roses type bike. And look at me just casually idle back in to our back stoop. And the exhaust sound. Our no-name eBay exhaust with the Chinese header. Unbelievable.
Well, so what do we think? Overall thoughts on getting a tune, you know, whether that's a different ECU or just an ECU flash on a 450L or RL. I mean, amazing, like unbelievable. There is so many pros to doing this, and I cannot find one con, besides that it costs money. Everything costs money. But it's just gonna make your bike so much more enjoyable and so much more well-rounded. You know, in my first reviews of this bike, I think my exact words were, it's an extreme machine and it's good for wide open spaces and big jumps. You know, I had a ton of gripes about the throttle response, how jerky it was. You know, a lot of people online had complaints about flame out and that their bike would die when they got to slow, more technical off-road things. And just everything is so different about this bike now. You know, before, of course, I wanted to go run it through, you know, some full throttle, wide open spaces. We did hit some big jumps on it. It took them awesome. I mean, this bike has a great suspension system, but now it's a machine that is good for so much more than that. Now, it's just great. It's gonna be an awesome machine for that trail riding, for those tight off-road settings. And before, possibly could have been your worst choice for that. You know, and then anything urban, really any riding that we did on the pavement, whether it was at slow speed, going down the highway, I mean, all of it to a certain extent was pretty unenjoyable. And it just all had to do with that throttle response and how the power was delivered. I mean, it really is just a 0 or 100 motorcycle before a tune. These stock 450s are just very hard to ride smoothly. It's very hard to enjoy yourself in every different terrain and environment. And now I can absolutely say that in every different setting, gosh, there is so many places now I want to take this bike. Now I'd run it downtown, I'd run it 100 miles down the highway. Give me the woods, give me the sand, give me the jumps. And on top of all that stuff, the performance that we gained from this is really incredible. I mean, to go up 20% in power from just a tune for the bike and your exhaust, that's pretty wild. And whether you want to leave your bike bone stock or if you want to modify everything on it, absolutely get your bike tuned with a flash or with a different ECU. Now, you won't get quite those peak horsepower numbers. You should be about at 41 horsepower if the rest of your bike is bone stock besides having that ECU tune. And I'm not gonna recommend one ECU flash or one aftermarket ECU over the other. It seems like all the stuff out there that I've seen has pretty good reviews. They're all kind of doing the exact same thing. Making a YouTube video, sorry. People just walk past and I'm looking like a crazy person here just talking to myself. The bike is awesome, just unbelievable and unrecognizable. I think we got ourselves a KTM killer right here, so that's kind of fun. So please drop a comment if you guys have any questions at all. Otherwise, like the video if this helped you out, subscribe if you want to see more, and until next time, have a wonderful night, guys.